I'm Naomi, 57 years old, and today I'm watching my daughter Lily graduate from college. It's a gorgeous sunny day, and my heart is bursting with pride. My husband Richard sits beside me, unusually tense despite the joyful occasion. Our 30-year marriage has weathered many storms, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. The moment Lily received her diploma, Richard leaned over and whispered, "I'm leaving you." His girlfriend watched from a few rows back. Before I tell you what happened when I handed him that envelope, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more true stories like mine. Our story begins long before that graduation day. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Pennsylvania, the daughter of a teacher and an accountant who instilled in me strong values and ambition. I worked my way through college and set my sights on a career in finance, determined to build a successful life for myself. I met Richard at a financial conference in Chicago 32 years ago. He was charismatic, intelligent, and had a confidence that immediately drew me in. We were both 28 at the time, eager to make our mark on the world. What started as casual conversation over conference coffee turned into dinner that evening, and by the end of the weekend, I felt a connection I'd never experienced before. Our relationship progressed quickly. Phone calls every evening turned into weekend visits between our cities. Within 3 months, Richard took a position at my firm in Philadelphia so we could be together. 5 months later, he proposed during a sunset walk along the river, and I said yes without hesitation. We married in a beautiful ceremony 8 months after we first met, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated our whirlwind romance. The early years were everything I'd hoped for. We both thrived in our careers, pushing each other to aim higher and work harder. Weekends were filled with fixing up the charming fixer-upper we purchased, planning our future, and enjoying our time together. When we weren't working, we traveled, exploring new cities and countries, building memories and strengthening our bond. 3 years into our marriage, we welcomed Lily into our lives. She was a beautiful, healthy baby with Richard's blue eyes and my curly hair. Parenthood changed us both. I scaled back my hours at work to focus on raising our daughter, while Richard threw himself even more intensely into his career, determined to provide the best life possible for us. Those years raising young Lily were exhausting, but wonderful. Richard was a devoted father when he was home reading bedtime stories and attending weekend activities. We created holiday traditions, took summer vacations to the beach, and appeared to everyone around us as the perfect family. And in many ways, we were happy. The first subtle signs that something might be changing came around Lily's 10th birthday. Richard began staying later at the office, his weekend work becoming more frequent. Business trips extended from 2 days to 4, then to full weeks. When he was home, he seemed distracted, often checking his phone or bringing work to the dinner table. I tried everything to maintain our connection. Date nights, family game evenings, surprise weekend getaways. Sometimes these efforts would bring back glimpses of the man I married, but the moments became increasingly brief. Richard would engage fully for a short time before drifting back into his world of spreadsheets, client calls, and networking events. Despite the growing distance, we maintained certain family traditions for Lily's sake. Sunday morning pancakes, yearly camping trips in the mountains, and special birthday celebrations remained sacred. Richard never missed Lily's school performances or sports events, even if he arrived just in time and left immediately after. By the time Lily entered high school, I had developed nagging suspicions about Richard's commitment to our marriage. Occasionally, I'd catch a glimpse of a text notification from someone named A on his phone. His explanation about a demanding client named Alan seemed plausible, but something felt off. Still, I dismissed my intuition, choosing to preserve our family harmony rather than confront what might be happening. As the years passed, I noticed subtle changes in Richard's personality. The kind, thoughtful man I married gradually became more critical, status-conscious, and materialistic. He became obsessed with appearances, upgrading our home cars and wardrobes to project success. Conversations about our relationship were redirected to discussions about financial goals or Lily's achievements. When I suggested marriage counseling, Richard reluctantly agreed, but after 3 sessions, he claimed his schedule was too demanding to continue. Instead, he surprised me with an expensive anniversary trip, as if material gestures could substitute for emotional connection. I accepted these gifts while feeling an increasing emptiness in our relationship. I coped by pouring myself into my own career advancement and motherhood. I returned to full-time work when Lily started high school, quickly rising to senior management. My relationship with Lily flourished as she matured into a thoughtful, intelligent young woman. We shared a bond that compensated somewhat for the growing void in my marriage. To the outside world, we maintained the facade of the perfect family. We hosted dinner parties where Richard charmed our guests. We attended charity galas, arm in arm, smiling for photographs. Our Christmas cards showed us in coordinated outfits on exotic vacations. No one would have guessed that beneath the surface, our connection was fraying thread by thread. Everything changed when Lily left for college 4 years ago. The empty nest that many couples use to reconnect became a cavernous space filled with silence between Richard and me. Without Lily as our focus and buffer, the distance between us grew even more apparent. Richard began traveling even more frequently, often gone 3 weeks out of every month. When home, he was physically present but emotionally unavailable, spending evenings in his home office or on the phone. Conversations became transactional, limited to household logistics and financial matters. 6 months before Lily's graduation, I noticed unusual charges on our shared credit card statement. Expensive restaurants in town on evenings Richard claimed to be working late. A jewelry store purchase that I never received. A weekend charge at a hotel just 30 miles from our home. Each discovery sent a cold ripple of suspicion through me, but I still lacked definitive proof. The confirmation came unexpectedly. Richard had left his phone on the kitchen counter while showering one morning and asked me to respond to an urgent client text. As I picked up his phone, a message preview appeared from someone named Amanda. The words I read shattered any remaining doubt. "Last night was amazing. I miss you already. Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore." My hands trembled as I set down the phone without opening the message. The physical reaction was immediate and overwhelming. My heart raced, my stomach churned, and I felt lightheaded as the reality crashed down around me. 30 years of marriage, and this was where we had ended up. After the initial shock subsided, I made a crucial decision. I would not confront Richard immediately. Instead, I would gather information and prepare myself for whatever lay ahead. This wasn't just emotional self-preservation. I knew Richard well enough to recognize that he would have a plan, and I needed to understand what I was facing. 2 days later, I hired a private investigator, something I never imagined doing in my marriage. Within 3 weeks, I had a comprehensive report that confirmed my worst fears. Richard had been having an affair for nearly 2 years with Amanda Wilson, a 38-year-old junior executive at his company. The investigator provided photos of them together at restaurants, entering and leaving a downtown apartment, and even on a weekend trip to a Finger Lakes winery. The betrayal cut deeper as I learned more. The investigator uncovered financial records showing Richard had opened secret accounts I knew nothing about. He had purchased an apartment in the city under an LLC and had been transferring significant funds from our joint investments. Most devastating of all, the investigator found evidence that Richard had been planning to leave me immediately after Lily's college graduation, timing his exit for when our parental obligations were officially complete. The emotional turmoil that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I cycled through grief for the marriage I thought I had, rage at Richard's calculated deception, and paralyzing fear about my future. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, wondering how I could have been so blind for so long. The weight of it pressed on my chest, making it difficult to breathe, to think, to function. Yet somehow I maintained a facade of normalcy. I continued going to work, speaking with Lily weekly about her final semester, and interacting with Richard as if nothing had changed. This performance took an immense emotional toll, but I was determined not to let Richard control the narrative of our separation. I consulted with a divorce attorney in secret, using a private email account and meeting during my lunch breaks. The attorney's advice was clear: document everything, protect what assets I could, and prepare for Richard to play hardball. Given his secret financial maneuvers, there was no reason to expect fairness or transparency. Thankfully, I had maintained some financial independence throughout our marriage. I had a retirement account in my name, only an inheritance from my parents, that Richard didn't know the full extent of, and investments I'd made independently. These would form the foundation of my financial security post-divorce. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy for Lily's sake during her final college semester. She was thriving, excited about graduation and graduate school interviews. When we spoke on video calls, I pushed aside my pain to focus on her achievements and plans. She deserved to enjoy this milestone without being dragged into her parents' drama. I made a promise to myself that Richard would not ruin her graduation day, no matter what happened between us. As the weeks passed and graduation approached, I realized that responding emotionally to Richard's inevitable announcement would only play into his hands. He likely expected tears, pleading, or angry outbursts that would paint me as unstable and justify his departure. I decided on a different approach entirely. I scheduled meetings with both financial advisors and a therapist to develop a comprehensive strategy. The financial advisors helped me understand our complete asset picture and identify vulnerabilities in Richard's secret planning. My therapist helped me process my grief and anger in private so I could maintain composure when it mattered most. With clear thinking, I developed an exit strategy that would protect my interests and dignity. First, I secured my professional future by reconnecting with my industry network. Discreet conversations at industry events led to an executive position offer from a competing firm with a start date 1 month after graduation. This would give me financial independence and a fresh professional chapter. I methodically documented all our marital assets, including those Richard thought I knew nothing about. I gathered financial statements, property records, tax returns, and evidence of his hidden accounts. My attorney used this information to draw up divorce papers with terms that would be fair and reasonable, but certainly not advantageous to Richard given his deception. 3 months before graduation, I purchased a condo in a neighborhood I'd always loved, using my inheritance as a down payment. I furnished it minimally but comfortably, creating a sanctuary that would be waiting for me. Having this space ready gave me tremendous peace of mind. Gradually, I began moving important belongings and documents to my new home. Family photographs, irreplaceable mementos, jewelry from my parents, and essential paperwork found their way to my condo without creating noticeable gaps in our family home. Each item secured represented another step toward my independence. The emotional journey was as important as the practical preparations. I spent hours with my therapist processing the grief of losing the marriage I thought I had and the future I had planned. We worked through the betrayal trauma and developed techniques for maintaining my composure when the moment of confrontation arrived. I practiced scenarios with my therapist, rehearsing how to respond to different approaches Richard might take. Would he be apologetic, defensive, cruel? We prepared for each possibility until I felt confident in my ability to remain calm regardless of his tactics. Throughout this preparation, I made a personal vow Richard would not see me break down, not because I needed to appear strong for his benefit, but because I refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing he could still affect me so deeply. My vulnerability was no longer his to witness. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage, carefully choosing confidants who could provide emotional support without gossiping about our situation. These friendships became lifelines, offering encouragement and perspective when my resolve wavered. The envelope I prepared became a symbol of my reclaimed power. Into it went copies of the divorce papers already filed with the court-selected photos from the private investigator documentation of Richard's hidden financial accounts and a USB drive containing additional evidence. The contents were not meant to be vindictive, but rather to establish that I was fully informed and prepared. In the weeks leading up to graduation, I focused intensely on self-care. Daily meditation helped quiet my anxious thoughts. Long walks cleared my mind. I paid attention to nutrition and sleep, knowing I would need physical and emotional strength for what lay ahead. Richard remained completely oblivious to my preparations. He continued his pattern of late nights and business trips, occasionally bringing home expensive gifts, as if purchasing my continued silence and compliance. His confidence that I suspected nothing was evident in his relaxed demeanor and casual mentions of our plans after Lily graduates. Despite my thorough preparation, I experienced moments of doubt. Late at night, I would question whether I was overreacting or making a terrible mistake. What if there was an innocent explanation for everything? But then I would review the evidence, remember the years of emotional neglect, and reconnect with my self-respect. The path forward was clear, even if it was painful. I timed everything to coincide with graduation. The divorce filing was submitted 2 days before the ceremony, but would not be served to Richard until the following week. My resignation letter was prepared, but not yet delivered to my firm. The final items were moved to my condo the night before graduation while Richard attended a business dinner. Everything was in place for the next chapter of my life to begin. The morning of Lily's graduation dawned bright and clear, a beautiful May day that seemed to mock the storm brewing beneath our family's surface. I awoke early after a restless night, taking extra care with my appearance. The navy blue dress I chose was elegant and confident, a subtle armor for the day ahead. Richard and I got ready separately, but maintained cordial conversation over coffee. On the surface, I appeared calm and focused on the day's celebration. Inside, my heart raced with anticipation and resolved determination. Years of suppressing my emotions had prepared me for this ultimate performance. I noticed Richard checking his phone constantly, his fingers typing rapid responses. His nervous energy manifested in repeated straightening of his tie and checking his watch. Twice he took calls in another room, his voice a controlled whisper. I pretended not to notice, commenting only on the perfect weather and our lunch reservations after the ceremony. We arrived at the university an hour early to avoid parking issues. The campus looked spectacular with its historic buildings adorned with banners and flowers. Families streamed toward the main quadrangle where rows of chairs faced the elaborate stage. Richard insisted on seats near an aisle, explaining it would be easier to take photos of Lily. I now understood his actual motivation. As we settled into our seats, I scanned the growing crowd and spotted her almost immediately. Amanda sat several rows behind us wearing a red dress and sunglasses despite the shaded seating area. She periodically glanced in our direction, quickly looking away when she noticed my attention. Richard was oblivious to my discovery, too preoccupied with his own nervous anticipation. Richard's agitation increased as the ceremony approached. He shifted in his seat, repeatedly loosened his collar, and checked his watch with growing frequency. His attempts to appear normal failed miserably as he stumbled through small talk with nearby parents. When I placed my hand on his arm and asked if he was feeling all right, he flinched before assuring me he was just warm in the morning sun. Before the ceremony began, we met briefly with Lily. She was radiant in her cap and gown, bubbling with excitement about starting graduate school in the fall. As she hugged us both, I held her a moment longer than usual, cherishing her joy and innocence. Richard managed a convincing display of fatherly pride, though his congratulations sounded rehearsed. If Lily noticed anything unusual, she didn't show it too, caught up in the excitement of her achievement. Watching Lily in her academic regalia, I felt a surge of pride so powerful it momentarily overshadowed my personal turmoil. This brilliant, kind young woman was my greatest accomplishment. Whatever happened with Richard, I had succeeded as a mother, guiding Lily to this momentous day. That certainty gave me strength for what was to come. We exchanged pleasantries with other parents we recognized from various school events over the years. I smiled and discussed post-graduation plans while Richard nodded distractedly, contributing little to the conversations. Several times I caught him checking his phone under the ceremony program, his expression tightening with each glance. Throughout this time, I maintained a hyper-awareness of everything around me, noticing details that would normally escape attention. The slight tremor in Richard's hand as he waved to an acquaintance. The way Amanda repeatedly touched her hair when Richard looked in her direction. The ironic theme of integrity and authenticity emphasized in the dean's welcome speech. The commencement address focused on embracing change and having courage to forge new paths, words that resonated deeply with my circumstances. The speaker talked about how endings create space for new beginnings and how the most difficult decisions often lead to the most meaningful growth. I couldn't have scripted a more appropriate message for the day. As the graduates' names were called in alphabetical order, the wait for Lily's turn became increasingly tense. Richard's leg bounced nervously beside me, and I noticed a light sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the comfortable temperature. 4 rows of graduates before Lily's row stood to line up. Richard checked his watch again, then surreptitiously glanced over his shoulder toward Amanda. When Lily's row finally stood to approach the stage, I felt an emotional crescendo building within me. This moment represented not only her achievement, but the culmination of our family life as we had known it. Through the viewfinder of my camera, I watched my daughter stride confidently across the stage, her posture tall and proud. Tears of genuine joy sprang to my eyes as she accepted her diploma and moved her tassel from right to left. In my peripheral vision, I saw Richard pull out his phone, typing quickly before returning it to his pocket. Moments later, I noticed Amanda checking her phone, nodding slightly in response to whatever message she had received. Their coordination was both painful to witness and validating of all my suspicions. The final pieces were falling into place exactly as I had anticipated. With only 2 rows of graduates remaining to be called, Richard's breathing became shallow and rapid. He loosened his tie completely and took several sips from his water bottle. The moment of his planned announcement was approaching, and his confidence appeared to be wavering. I remained focused on the ceremony, applauding each graduate while preparing myself mentally for the confrontation to come. The last name was called the final diploma presented. As the university president began his concluding remarks, Richard leaned close to my ear. His breath was warm against my skin as he whispered the words he had rehearsed, but I had long anticipated, "Naomi, I'm leaving you." Although I had prepared for this moment for months, the actual words still sent a jolt through my body. My hands tightened momentarily around the ceremony program before I regained my practiced composure. I turned slightly toward him, my expression neutral as he continued his prepared speech. "I haven't been happy for a long time," he whispered, eyes darting nervously to the families around us. "I've met someone else. She understands me in ways you never could." He gestured subtly toward the back rows where Amanda sat watching our interaction intently. "That's her there in the red dress. Her name is Amanda. I wanted to wait until today so we wouldn't ruin Lily's college experience. I thought it was the right thing to do." The careful timing of his announcement, designed to minimize his inconvenience while appearing considerate, revealed so much about who Richard had become. Even in ending our marriage, his primary concern was managing appearances and his own comfort. "I've already found an apartment," he continued, gaining confidence from my silence. "I'll be moving out tomorrow. My lawyer will be contacting yours this week." I allowed him to finish his rehearsed monologue, maintaining eye contact without revealing the storm of emotions beneath my surface. When he finally paused, expecting tears, recriminations, or a scene, I simply nodded once. "Thank you for your honesty, Richard," I replied, my voice steady and clear. "I appreciate you waiting until Lily's graduation." My calm response clearly confused him. His eyebrows furrowed as he studied my face for signs of the breakdown he had anticipated. Finding none, his confusion began to shift towards suspicion. I reached into my purse and removed the sealed envelope I had prepared so carefully. The weight of it in my hands represented months of investigation, preparation, and reclaimed power. Without drama or fanfare, I placed it on his lap. "What's this?" he asked, his tone dismissive as he glanced at the unmarked envelope. "Something you should read before making any further announcements," I replied quietly. Around us, families stood and cheered as the ceremony concluded, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in our row. Graduates tossed their caps into the air as Richard reluctantly opened the envelope, likely expecting some sentimental plea for reconciliation. His hands withdrew the contents slowly. The divorce petition filed in my name 2 days prior, the private investigator's report with photos of him and Amanda, bank statements for accounts he thought were secret property records for his hidden assets, and the small USB drive containing additional evidence. I watched as the blood drained from his face. His fingers trembled slightly as he shuffled through the documents, comprehension dawning with each page. When he looked up, his eyes were wide with shock and the first flickers of panic. How did you?" he stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. "I've known about Amanda for months," I said calmly. "I've also known about the downtown apartment, the account in the Caymans, and your plans to leave after graduation." As Richard struggled to process this revelation, Amanda approached as they had clearly planned. She hovered uncertainly at the end of our row, waiting for her cue to be introduced as the new woman in Richard's life. "This is illegal," Richard hissed, his voice rising as he clutched the documents. "You had me followed. You invaded my privacy. You went behind my back." The irony of his accusation might have been amusing under different circumstances. His face flushed red as he realized the extent of my preparations and the complete reversal of the power dynamic he had expected. "You can't do this," he said, his volume increasing as his control slipped. "You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea what this will do to me, to my reputation, to my career?" Several nearby families turned to look at us, their celebratory conversations interrupted by Richard's escalating reaction. Amanda took a step back, clearly reconsidering her approach as she witnessed his growing meltdown. "Keep your voice down, Richard," I advised quietly. "This is Lily's day." My reminder about our daughter only seemed to fuel his anger. "You planned this," he accused, standing up and pointing a finger at me. "You deliberately set this up to humiliate me, after everything I've done for you and Lily." His voice had risen to a shout, now drawing stares from across the quadrangle. A security officer began moving in our direction as Richard continued his tirade, waving the documents in the air. 30 years, I gave you 30 years, and this is how you repay me, by sneaking around and filing papers without even talking to me first." From the graduates section, I could see Lily looking our way with concern. I gave her a reassuring smile, silently promising to explain everything later. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice," the security officer said as he reached our row. "We're going to have to ask you to step outside if you can't maintain appropriate behavior." Amanda had retreated several rows back, pretending not to be associated with the scene Richard was creating. Her carefully planned debut as Richard's new partner was disintegrating before her eyes. Do you know what she did? Richard demanded of the security officer, brandishing the envelope. She hired someone to spy on me. She's trying to ruin me. Sir, please come with me now, the officer insisted, placing a firm hand on Richard's arm. This is a university celebration, not a place for personal disputes. As Richard was escorted away, still shouting about betrayal and threatening legal action, I remained seated, maintaining the composure I had practiced for months. His public meltdown was entirely of his own making, the consequence of his assumption that I would play the role of devastated wife according to his script. The security team escorted Richard from the ceremony grounds, his protests fading as they moved toward the parking area. Amanda followed at a distance, her red dress visible as she hurried after him, clearly embarrassed by the unexpected turn of events. The carefully orchestrated exit they had planned had transformed into a humiliating spectacle. I stayed for the remainder of the event, joining the crowd of parents searching for their graduates among the sea of identical caps and gowns. When Lily found me, her expression was a mixture of joy and concern. "Mom, what happened with Dad?" she asked as we embraced. "I saw security taking him away. Is everything okay?" Finding a quiet spot under a campus oak tree, I gave her a simplified version of the truth. "Your father has decided to end our marriage," I explained gently. "He chose today to tell me and didn't react well when I showed him. I was already aware and prepared." Lily's shock gave way to hurt and then anger as she processed this information. "He picked my graduation day for this, and who was that woman following him out?" "Her name is Amanda," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "She works with your father. They've been involved for some time." To her credit, Lily's first concern was for me rather than herself. "Are you okay, Mom?" "This is awful. I can't believe he would do this today of all days." I hugged her tightly. "I'm going to be fine, sweetheart. I've had time to prepare and I've made arrangements for moving forward. Today is still about celebrating your achievement, and I refuse to let anything overshadow that." We proceeded with our lunch reservation, though Richard's place remained empty. Throughout the meal, Lily alternated between excitement about her future and concern about our family's upheaval. I kept the focus on her accomplishments and plans for graduate school, promising we would discuss the family situation in more detail later. Over the next 48 hours, Richard's desperation manifested in a barrage of phone calls, text messages, and emails. His tone evolved from angry accusations to panicked negotiation as the reality of his situation became clear. His carefully laid plans for a clean break and advantageous divorce were crumbling. "You've left me with nothing," he texted at 3 in the morning. "We need to talk about this like adults. You're being vindictive and unreasonable." I responded only once, directing all future communication to my attorney. This professional boundary frustrated him further, leading to a voicemail where he alternated between threats and pleas for understanding. The day after graduation, Lily helped me move the last of my belongings to my new condo. She was quiet as we arranged furniture and unpacked boxes, processing the abrupt change in her family structure. That evening, sitting among half-unpacked boxes with takeout dinner, she finally asked the question that had been brewing. "Did you know this was coming for a while, Mom? You seem so prepared." I explained how I had discovered the affair and Richard's plans and my decision to take control of the situation rather than be victimized by it. I was careful not to disparage Richard, too severely aware that regardless of his actions, he was still Lily's father. "I'm proud of you," she said, simply reaching for my hand. "I'm angry at Dad, but I'm so proud of how you've handled this." The legal process began in earnest the following week. Richard's initial attempts to control the narrative and proceedings quickly dissolved when faced with the evidence I had gathered. His lawyer, upon reviewing the documentation, advised him to settle rather than fight a losing battle in court. The divorce mediation was scheduled for 6 weeks after graduation. Richard arrived looking haggard and defensive, a sharp contrast to the confident man who had planned to leave me on his terms. As we sat across from each other with our respective attorneys, his eyes avoided mine, focusing instead on the documents before him. My attorney presented our terms: an equitable division of marital assets, including those Richard had attempted to hide, and a reasonable spousal support arrangement given the length of our marriage. The terms were fair but not generous, reflecting the manner in which Richard had planned his exit. "These terms are completely unreasonable." Richard objected, though his protest lacked conviction. "She's just trying to punish me." "On the contrary, My attorney responded calmly. If Mrs. Williams wanted to punish you, we would be discussing the implications of financial fraud and requesting a forensic accounting of all your transactions for the past 5 years. These terms simply restore balance to a situation where you attempted to create a significant imbalance. By the end of the 4-hour session, Richard had accepted most of the proposed terms, his resistance weakening with each reference to the evidence we possessed. As we prepared to leave, he attempted to speak with me privately, but I declined, maintaining the boundary I had established. During this period, I learned through mutual acquaintances that Amanda had ended their relationship shortly after the graduation incident. Apparently, the reality of Richard's situation was far less appealing than the fantasy he had presented to her. The wealthy, soon-to-be single executive ready for a fresh start had transformed overnight into a man embroiled in a disadvantageous divorce with a damaged reputation. My professional transition proceeded more smoothly than I could have hoped. My new position at a competing firm offered fresh challenges and a supportive environment. Colleagues who had heard rumors about Richard's behavior at the graduation ceremony tactfully avoided the topic, but their respect was evident in their interactions with me. Richard's professional standing, meanwhile, suffered significant damage. Word spread quickly about his affair with a junior employee, raising questions about workplace ethics and professional judgment. Several important clients requested reassignment to other advisors, citing concerns about trust and integrity. As summer turned to fall, I established new routines in my condo. The space felt increasingly like home as I selected furnishings and decorations that reflected my personal taste, rather than the compromise of marital preferences. For the first time in decades, every decision was entirely my own, from the color of the living room walls to the time I went to bed. The first holiday after our separation presented emotional challenges. Thanksgiving had always been a significant family celebration in our household, with traditions developed over decades. Lily was torn between spending time with each of us, her loyalty divided by her father's actions. We ultimately created a new arrangement where she spent Thanksgiving Day with Richard and the following weekend with me, allowing both of us time with her while minimizing awkwardness. Throughout this period, Lily struggled to reconcile her understanding of her father with his recent behavior. During our conversations, she expressed confusion, anger, and sadness as she processed this new reality. I encouraged her to maintain her relationship with Richard while establishing appropriate boundaries, emphasizing that his failures as a husband didn't necessarily reflect his value as a father. "I just don't understand how he could throw away 30 years, she confessed during one of our Sunday coffee meetings. Didn't those years mean anything to him? Relationships are complicated." I responded carefully. "The choices your father made reflect his own issues, not the worth of our family or the time we shared. Try to remember the good father he was to you, even as you acknowledge the hurt his actions have caused." Unexpectedly, Richard's parents and sister reached out to me shortly before Christmas. They had been distant during our marriage, largely due to Richard's controlling nature regarding family interactions. Now they expressed regret for their absence and apologized for their son's behavior. This reconnection brought healing I hadn't anticipated, adding new supportive relationships to my life when I most needed them. Throughout this challenging period, I discovered unexpected allies and support. Former colleagues offered job leads and networking opportunities. Neighbors in my new building invited me to community events, helping me establish local connections. Even parents of Lily's childhood friends reached out, many, revealing that they had experienced similar challenges in their own lives. As difficult as this transition was, each day brought a growing sense of liberation mixed with natural grief for what had been lost. The marriage I mourned was not the reality I had lived, but the idea of what I had thought we shared. Acknowledging this distinction was a crucial step in my healing process. 1 year after that fateful graduation day, the divorce was finally official. The document arrived by certified mail on a Tuesday morning, a surprisingly anticlimactic end to 30 years of marriage. I signed for the envelope, made myself a cup of tea, and sat on my balcony to review the final decree. Despite the preparation and anticipation, seeing the official termination of our union brought unexpected tears. Not for the loss of Richard, but for the dreams and plans that would never materialize. By this time, my condo had been transformed into a true reflection of myself. Gone were the heavy drapes and formal furniture Richard had preferred, replaced by light fabrics, comfortable seating, and art that spoke to my soul rather than my status. Friends often commented on how the space seemed to radiate warmth and personality in a way our previous home never had. The divorce settlement provided financial security, though I relied primarily on my own career for my sense of accomplishment and daily purpose. My role at the new firm had expanded to include mentoring younger women in finance, something I found deeply rewarding. Sharing the wisdom gained through my personal and professional challenges gave meaning to difficult experiences. My social circle had evolved significantly since the separation. I reconnected with college friends who had drifted away during my marriage, discovering that these dormant friendships could be revitalized with surprising ease. I joined a book club in my building and a hiking group that explored local trails on weekends. These new connections were refreshingly uncomplicated, free from the baggage of my marital history. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I began attending a support group for women navigating midlife transitions. The stories shared in that circle of trust revealed how common my experience was despite how isolated I had felt initially. I eventually became a facilitator for the group, helping other women recognize their strength and resilience during challenging life changes. The therapeutic journey from acute pain to acceptance was neither linear nor simple. There were days when anger resurged with unexpected intensity, moments when grief ambushed me in the grocery store or during a movie. My therapist helped me recognize these emotions as natural parts of healing rather than setbacks, encouraging me to acknowledge them without judgment. To mark the 18-month anniversary of my new beginning, I took my first solo vacation, a 2-week exploration of Italy I had always dreamed of, but Richard had repeatedly dismissed. Wandering through Tuscan vineyards and Roman ruins, I discovered a joy in solitude I had never anticipated. The freedom to follow my curiosity without compromise felt like a luxurious gift to myself. Upon returning from Italy, I began reconnecting with interests and hobbies I had abandoned during my marriage. I took piano lessons, something I had enjoyed as a young woman, but set aside when Richard complained about the noise. I joined a community garden, getting my hands dirty growing vegetables and flowers. These activities reconnected me with aspects of myself that had been suppressed for years. Throughout this period, Lily continued her own healing process. Her initial anger toward her father gradually softened into a cautious relationship with clear boundaries. She refused to discuss my relationship with him or to carry messages between us, establishing herself as separate from our conflict. Our mother-daughter bond grew even stronger, evolving into a balanced adult relationship based on mutual respect and genuine friendship. Richard continued his attempts at reconciliation well into the second year of our separation. His approach evolved from aggressive demands to nostalgic reminiscence about our early years together. "We had something special once," he wrote in an email. "We could find that again if you'd just give us another chance." I recognized these overtures for what they were: not genuine remorse or self-awareness, but reaction to the consequences of his choices. Amanda was gone, his professional reputation was damaged, and the exciting new life he had envisioned had failed to materialize. What he wanted was not me, but the comfort and stability I had always provided. Learning to set boundaries with Richard was an essential part of my healing. I limited communication to matters directly relating to Lily or necessary legal issues. I declined invitations to discuss the past or consider reconciliation. When he sent gifts or sentimental cards on my birthday or our former anniversary, I returned them unopened. This consistency gradually established a new normal that even Richard was forced to accept. 27 months after graduation day, I found myself feeling ready to consider dating again. Not from loneliness or need, but from a place of curiosity and openness to new experiences. I approached this prospect with intentional caution, taking time to define what I wanted and needed in a relationship after decades of compromise. My first date in over 30 years was with a professor from the local university, arranged through a mutual friend. The evening was pleasant but unremarkable, notable primarily for the discovery that I could enjoy male company without expectation or obligation. Several similar experiences followed, each teaching me something about my preferences and boundaries. I was surprised to find that dating in my 50s offered freedoms I never experienced in my 20s. Without the biological clock or social pressure to find the one, I could approach relationships with genuine curiosity rather than evaluation. This perspective made connections more authentic and enjoyable, whether or not they led to deeper involvement. Approximately 3 years after our separation, I encountered Richard unexpectedly at a popular downtown restaurant. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, both dressed for what appeared to be a business dinner rather than a romantic evening. Our eyes met across the room, and after a moment's hesitation, Richard nodded in acknowledgement. What struck me most about this encounter was my emotional response, or rather the lack of it. There was no surge of anger, no twist of pain, not even the satisfaction of indifference I might have expected. Instead, I felt a simple recognition of a person from my past significant in my history, but no longer central to my present. This realization was perhaps the clearest indication of how completely I had moved forward. The journey through betrayal and recovery taught me lessons about resilience I could never have anticipated. I learned that self-worth must come from within, never from another's validation or presence. I discovered that intuition deserves respect and attention even when its messages are uncomfortable. Most importantly, I understood that preparation and clear-eyed assessment are not cynical but necessary tools for navigating life's uncertainties. The betrayal that once seemed like the ending of everything meaningful became instead the doorway to authentic freedom. Not the illusory freedom of escaping responsibility as Richard had sought, but the deeper liberty of living in alignment with my true self, unburdened by pretense or compromise. I often think about how we define victory in situations like mine. It's not about financial settlements or public vindication, though those have their place. The real triumph lies in reclaiming your story, refusing to be defined by another's actions, and discovering that your capacity for joy and meaning extends far beyond what you imagined possible. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that eventually led to unexpected freedom? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and renewal. Remember that even in our most painful moments, we are gathering strength for a future we cannot yet imagine. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to write new chapters in your own.